Dominique here. Welcome to another London Self-Defense Academy video. We're focusing on self-defense for women again this week. And this week we're going to be looking at certain techniques that we can use to try and diffuse and get out of a situation where our attacker has come close to us and is holding us in a grab. Great, okay, so you might remember from our last video we discussed hair grabs and how to get out of a hair grab, which is your opponent comes and grabs you by the hair. Today we're going to expand on that a little bit, and we're going to look at what we can do where perhaps you've been unsuccessful in getting out of the hair grab, or your opponents come in too quickly and too aggressively and they've put you in a much kind of stronger, more aggressive grab. So what would happen there would look something like this. So you see my opponent's connected with the back of my neck or my hair, and they've also grabbed me by the shoulders. So trying to get out of this is a bit awkward at the moment. So what can we do here? So step one, and you'll hear me saying this in almost every video we do that's got anything to do with female self-defense, which is we need to drop our center of gravity. So we need to bend our knees and bring ourselves closer to the floor. What does this do? This stabilizes us and makes us much harder to move around. So if I'm standing at my full height, I'm quite easy to manipulate. I don't weigh very much. I'm a small woman, and in all likelihood my attacker is going to be much larger and heavier than me. So I need to make myself as difficult to move as possible. And I do that by stabilizing myself lower to the ground. From here, it becomes much harder from him to destabilize me. So that's step one. So once we've got ourselves close to the ground, what do? We need to think of how we're going to get ourselves out of this situation. And here, we can't just pull away. That's no longer an option. So we need to think about where we can strike our opponent to encourage him to let go of us. In this situation, we've got 4 areas that I'd like you to think about. And we're going to start from the bottom and go upwards. So area number 1 is the feet. So the feet are actually a pretty good place to strike because they're very sensitive, they're full of really small bones, and it can cause a lot of pain if one of those bones is broken. So a way of attacking our opponent's feet is you can step in and, aiming with the heel of your foot rather than the front of your foot, stamp down on the foot as hard as you can and repeatedly. Do not assume ever that one strike is going to do the job, so just do it many times as hard as you can. Another good option going upwards is the shins. So if you've ever been kicked in the shin in the playground, you'll know how much this can hurt. And the reason that's the case is because it's quite a bony part of our body. There isn't much muscle at the front of the shin, so it actually can hurt quite a lot. And the other benefit that the shin has is that it's quite a large surface area, so that makes it harder to miss, particularly in a situation where you have to move quickly and you have to think quickly and act quickly. So for the shins, and again this will slightly depend on what kind of footwear you're in, but if you're in sort of flat shoes or trainers, anything like that, it's quite easy to step in and start administering kicks to the shin. Again, as many as you can, as hard as you can, hopefully until they let you go. So we've looked at the feet, we've looked at the shins, then moving upwards we've got the thighs. The thighs aren't a very effective place to hit, mainly because they're quite muscly and potentially fatty as well. They're quite a soft area, so if you administer a strike to the hips and to the quads, it's not going to hurt very much. So it's not going to be a very effective way of forcing your attacker to let go of you. So we try and ignore the hips. And then the next area that's pretty vulnerable that we can go for is the groin. Now again, a successful and well-executed groin strike will be extremely effective, of course, because it's going to cause a lot of pain. However, we need to be a little bit mindful about the kind of technique that we utilize when we go for a groin strike. The reason for this is twofold. First of all, the groin is a relatively small area of our body. So in the heat of the moment when you're acting quickly, it can be quite easy to miss. And if you miss, particularly if your attacker keeps moving their hips, you're just going into the thigh, and like we said before, that's not going to be super effective. It's not painful enough. So, and the other reason, of course, is that a lot of attackers, if they're male, might be anticipating the fact that you might go for the groin, so they will shift to stop you from hitting that painful point. So what can we do to execute a groin strike more effectively? We can employ what's called a pendulum swing. So instead of just using our hand to punch directly at the groin. What we do instead is we extend our arm straight and drag it like a pendulum underneath the body, like so. This is pretty effective because regardless of whether you hit the groin with your fist or with your forearm, it's still going to be very painful. It's also much harder for my attacker to avoid a pendulum swing because even if he's swinging his hips, I can still slide in there and hit my target a bit more effectively. So when you're executing this, I want you to think about reaching your fist behind the other person. So don't just bring your fist up into the groin like this because you might miss again, but think about extending forwards and under so that you're aiming to hit with the forearm. So finally, a fourth area that's available to me to strike in this kind of situation is the solar plexus area. So this is quite sensitive again, and a successful strike will cause quite a lot of pain. Now again, there's a little bit of technique that we need to think about here. So as you can see, I've got tiny wrists. They're not very powerful. I can't recruit much strength behind my fist. So if I just punch, the likelihood that I'm going to be able to recruit enough strength is pretty low. So instead, what I want to do is to make my fist more efficient, to enable it to recruit more power. And the way we do this is by employing the palm strike. So I put my hand in this position, which you might recall we discussed in the hair grab context as well, and I drive the heel of my palm, so this area, into the solar plexus. And remember, you drive it upwards and you recoil. That's how you generate the most power. So to demonstrate, and hopefully that's an effective way of dealing with the situation. Another thing we can look at exploring when somebody's grabbed us close by and we want to strike the solar plexus is, so again, I'm in this position. We've talked about the heel strike. Another option is using your elbow to execute an attack. So this is particularly useful if your opponent is actually pretty close to you and maybe they've got you in an awkward position, you're a bit sideways, you can't really bring the heel of your palm forward into them. So instead what you can do is drive your elbow into the solar plexus. That's also quite an effective way. And again, as we were discussing with the techniques we use for the other sensitive areas that we've identified, don't ever assume that one strike is going to be enough. Just keep striking, keep hitting them, employ every technique that you can think of in order to get them to let go of you and so that you can get out of the situation as quickly and safely as you can. Okay, so we've run through different techniques that we can use. We've talked about how to attack the feet, how to attack the shins, the groin and the solar plexus. I want you to practice all of these different techniques because it's good to have a variety of tools in your arsenal. The reason being that in the heat of the moment, when you have to act quickly, it might not be enough to just practice one single technique. And once you've got a number of techniques under your belt, you can think about how to combine these techniques for maximum effect. So for example, a combination that I could do would be a pendulum swing plus an elbow to the solar plexus. So I just step in, do my pendulum swing, and also drive my elbow into my attacker's solar plexus. That would be an effective combination. Another combination that you could think about would be a stomp on the foot and a palm strike to the solar plexus, or an elbow depending on your positioning. Play around with these techniques, see what works best for you. We all have things that we feel more comfortable with and less comfortable with, and the more prepared you are, the more chance you will have of successfully extricating yourself from an attack. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed our video on these self-defense techniques. As ever, remember that self-defense techniques are a complement to taking normal safety precautions. So please be aware of your surroundings and keep yourself safe. Get yourself out of the situation as soon as possible if you can do so. I really hope you enjoyed this and you found it useful. If you did, please hit the like button, please subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you soon for more amazing content. Thank you. Please don't just rely on these techniques, but rather, I don't like it. No, let's stop. You fell too quickly.
Try to escape from his grab.
Well, it's actually relatively easy, I would think, because I can just drive my elbow into his chin, right?
Yeah.
And
Maybe.
that's not pleasant, is it?
Try to make him fall, maybe.
Ah, good idea.